Hey everyone, good morning. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. Today's Friday, so you know what that means. It's the Catalyst Weekly Astrology Report. So welcome back everyone to my subscribers and my regular viewing audience. And, regardless of what platform you're finding yourself on, either YouTube or BitChute or Odysee, thank you so much for being here. And if you're new to this channel, welcome. Thank you for stopping by. And if you find this content inspiring and helpful, if I can keep myself articulate just long enough to give this report. If you really value this work after stopping by, you can always support this work by subscribing to this channel, hitting that like button, and commenting is great. Getting into the live chat if that's something that you can do. But even on the recording, you can always comment and we can have an exchange that way too. So thank you in advance. And of course, absolutely, if you want to support this work monetarily, you can go to the link in the description box below to Subscribestar, and you can support this work for $3 a month as a subscriber. And there will be subscriber exclusive content coming soon. I know I keep saying that, but it's because it is coming. It's just a matter of the perfect timing. Isn't that right? And that's what we're really studying here with astrology, isn't it? Divine timing, which is the only timing. So we're going to talk about the astrology for today, the weekend. We have the moon leaving Aquarius, moving into Pisces, and then at the end of the weekend, coming into Aries as well. And so this is an important week. Not only do we have the full moon lunar eclipse happening next Friday, a week from today on the 19th, there is a couple of reconnections in some ways to what the new moon in this lunar cycle really represented, because we're going to have Mars and we're going to have Mercury both crossing that point of the new moon that we had this month and making an opposition to Uranus. So there is a lot of opportunity this week for innovation and really kind of, getting ourselves in a place where we can navigate successfully this this gateway that's open, this 1111 portal. So I'm curious to see how people are doing. I will tell you that for me personally, it feels like that it was a huge blast with the 1111 opening yesterday, and we talked about that at the beginning of yesterday's Daily Medicine transmission. The trifecta between the Schumann resonance, the astrology transits of yesterday, and the actual seismic activity, and just mind-blowing how connected it all was, and how high the frequency, the actual frequency itself of the electromagnetic field that is described by the Schumann resonance, right? It is the frequency itself of the electromagnetic field increased at the 1111 changeover from the 10th to the 11th. It increased to a frequency that has not been measured before, as far as I understand it. Perhaps it has, but it's been my understanding that it has not gotten that high. So there was a very large blast open. And the splitting apart and the polarity that we've been living under, and managing and navigating and trying to understand and make sense of is soon going to come to an end, because the nodal axis of the moon is going to shift into Taurus and Scorpio come early 2022. So we are in this interesting time period right now that is giving us impressions, energetic impressions of what that's going to be in a very soul-oriented karmic way. And we'll go into so much of that stuff later in terms of the Pleiadian revival, eclipse season, what the next 6 months are likely to set up for us and what opportunities are there. But it does feel like that we've, the blast open for the 1111 gateway, walking through that Sphinx gate was substantial. And now there's the pressure of the reality of it that is now starting to weigh. So I can say for myself that the literal barometric pressure around where I live has changed, which, is really can be very oppressive. It's very tired, right? There's not enough coffee in the world right now that feels like will get me woken up. Just being able to bring forward this information is certainly helping, right? To kind of wake up the soul. But it was a struggle getting out of bed this morning. So I'm curious how people are feeling, because it's one thing to get this blast of this incredible blast of energy that came through as this portal opened, and very inspiring, right? And time, it really is time, as we saw with the intuitive reading. It's very much time to start coming into oneness and start bringing it back into this 0 point in the singularity. And we've seen these messages come up all week. So it's not that unusual to continue to work with these themes, but the reality of it, right? And the very intense emotional nature of it is now starting to come online. And with the moon in Pisces over the weekend, we're really going to be dropping into the feels really strongly, okay, right? There's no boundaries with the moon in Pisces. You feel it all. You feel it all. You feel yourself. You feel other people, which in some ways is going to be the perfect way for us to really get a sense and experience the state of oneness that is absolutely necessary moving forward, right? We have to stop really giving our energy to the bifurcation that has been created for us in order to keep us from actually unifying and coming to this awareness that we are all part of the same source. So the moon in Pisces over the weekend is really going to, I think, be an assisting factor, although it can be very overwhelming when all of the boundaries kind of dissolve away, when you can't really feel the difference between you and other people, when your empath stuff and empath abilities really gets amplified and hypersensitive. So but in another way, what it does feel like is this beautiful moment where we can really have some compassion for people, like true compassion for ourselves and for other people, because everybody is coming at this from their own vantage point. We all have our own relationship to source right now, and our decisions certainly are our own. And so the best thing we can do is really support each other as much as possible and hold space for those who are struggling, and to acknowledge their own journey and see them as a human being, just like we want to see ourselves, and then we want other people to see us as well. There is the sun is in a trine to Neptune today. We'll look at all the chart stuff. I'm just covering the basics here. The sun is in a trine to Neptune. And when we talked about this yesterday, we talked about how this part of Scorpio is this third decan of Scorpio. The third 10 degrees of Scorpio is where the reality of what we've discovered and investigated and come to know about the underlying power of what we produce together is, if we don't want to drown in it, right? If we don't want to be overtaken by all of the swamp of it, it requires some ability to really come back up to the surface and not be dragged down and weighed down by it, because that's a real concern, and you can literally feel it. At least I can. I can't speak for anybody else, but it's heavy, right? It's heavy right now. And even though there's this beautiful trine to Neptune in Pisces today, and the opportunity with the moon in Pisces to connect to Neptune over the weekend to really give us an individual and personalized connection to to surrendering what is coming, and to be able to not only visualize it, but to actually feel it energetically, and to welcome it, and to value it, and to treat it as if you would treat a little lamb that you were petting, right? It's soft, and it's new, and it's an experience, right? It's you're not rationalizing it, you're not intellectualizing it, you're not trying to even understand it or its meaning. It's just pure experience. And the experience of it is important, but what we're going to find here is that it is very heavy. And as much as we are finding our voice in this moment of following our conscience and a sense of individual value and integrity in the face of an authoritarian regime or authoritarian rule or a system, right? It's one thing to find our voice through that. That is important, but there are consequences, and that is the heavy part that we are going to be working with. Now, through the week, like I said, there's going to be Mars and Mercury reaching that new moon point in their transit of Scorpio, each of them in an opposition to Uranus. And so as we are now this gateway of oneness, right, which Uranus really does represent, it does force individuation, and it represents the triggering of very radical and swift transformation and radical reorientation. It does also, it rules Aquarius, which is the laser point, right? It is the singular gnosis of what is and the connection of all through that, through our collective third eye. And so in some ways we are walking through this gateway with our material essence intact and what we need to let go of. And this is the theme we've been talking about, since Uranus moved into this degree of Taurus. Each of these points now in opposition to Uranus throughout the week of Mercury and Mars in particular in opposition gives us another opportunity to actually innovate, to use our minds and our communication and our ability to conceptualize. And then with Mars, our action, right? Our action and our bravery and courage and this impulse to be ourselves is then going to also cross this point and be in an opposition. So it's a tense aspect, right? Because while we are focusing on investigating and getting to the root of things and really trying to delve into the depth of what it means to come together and produce something, right? Whatever it is. Remember, the seed of our creation is our subconscious, and this is where the power really, really lies. As much as we are putting our energy and focus into those areas, the opposition, again, will be like, remember, you can only take what can go with you through this gateway. And at 11:11, right, it is about unity. And oneness. And so anything that reinforces that separation, anything that reinforces that separation or that dualistic nature or reinforces the shadow element, we can't take with us. And so there'll be plenty of opportunities this week to be able to see that more clearly, to act on that perhaps. And it won't come without some real friction or at least some real tension here that we're going to have to release. So we'll look at the astrology in particular to get a handle and really just weave this all together and understand each constituent part as we go along. It's going to be a very emotional weekend, right? With the moon in Pisces and all of the Scorpio energy that is making itself known. It's going to be a very emotional and feeling-based weekend. And there's so much potential for it to be just so beautifully compassionate and forgiving, and our ability to really just find some true unconditional love for ourselves and for those around us. So one thing that has been coming through, I think, very strongly, and I've been acting on, is check in with your peeps, right? Or if you're struggling, ask for help, right? Ask for assistance. Reach out to people. I think this is a really good thing to do right now because we need to be cohesive with each other, and we need to show each other that we are here for each other, and that we can support each other, and that we have all of the means to support each other. But if we're not asking and we're not reaching out, that's what I've been doing. I've been reaching out and just checking in with people I haven't talked to in a couple weeks that I'm like, hey, what's going on? I really urge you to do that, especially over the weekend. And you may get, intuitive hits to do that, right? And I think it's really important. So we'll just dive right into the chart. I don't really have much to share other than that. In terms of anything else today, in terms of like the Schumann or any kind of solar weather. I've posted a lot of resources that will allow you to actually track a lot of this stuff on your own and come to your own conclusions. So I really invite people to do that as well. And I'll always bring it back around because that's my personal interest as well. So checking in with the chat here. Still processing all the things yesterday was incredible. Yeah, wasn't it? It was just mind-blowing what was happening yesterday on so many levels. The universe is speaking to me loud and clear today, and it's time to go home. Oh, yeah, that's so interesting because we did talk about that in terms of like leaving yourself open for the leaving yourself open to be guided very intuitively, and I'm really very proud of you for doing that. Not that I didn't think you could. I know that you could, Alex K, but you're listening, and that's a good thing, because a lot of times what we end up doing is working against ourselves and our own intuition by trying to superimpose or almost like force what we think we should be doing rather than just feeling in. And so the moon in Pisces is going to be a really good asset for those of us who are able to manage this space really masterfully. And Pallas Athena is now moving direct in Pisces, which means that that asteroid is now moving towards Neptune as well. But right now it's in a very favorable position to support a strategy of really a sense of mastery over our spiritual nature and that transcendental realm. And that does include the astral, that includes the morphogenetic field, the Akash, however you identify it, and our connection, our direct connection to each other. That's the thing about Pisces. It's the experience that there's no difference between you or I or anything else. And that does cultivate actual compassion and forgiveness, because we realize that when you hurt other people, then you are really just hurting yourself. So let's, thank you for the feedback, guys. I think it's helpful that we're speaking to each other and that we're coming to these conclusions together. So let's just get right into it. Today is the 12th of November, and I'm glad that people are still processing what's been going on. It may take throughout the weekend to do so. And the heaviness and the responsibility and the... you can just really feel that people are starting to actually wake up. Not only wake up, but starting to wake up and act on that awakening very quickly. Very, very quickly. And it's going to keep coming about over and over throughout the rest of the month. But I would say this week leading up to the eclipse is a very important time to do some investigation on how to navigate now that this unification energy is now available to us with 1111. There were so many different things yesterday, just like small synchronous connections that I was just blown away by, that I was like, wow. And the time of the splitting apart is definitely over. Like, it's over now. And that is, we still have the nodes in Gemini and Sagittarius for a couple more months, but the eclipse is going to be the timestamp that is going to lead us into the future in terms of what we need to release in order to step into this whole new era, which is a very natural release. That's the thing about Taurus. We're talking about the natural world and the natural progression into new stages. So it's not, I've said this many, many times, it's going to be distorted with the eclipse. It's not going to be fully realized by us unless we're prepared for it and we're able to discern the difference between what we see or what we think we see and what we deeply, deeply feel. And sometimes things are just not done cooking, right? And with an eclipse, it's kind of this idea that it's going to take a lot longer for these expressions to unfold and present themselves. So that's the other thing. The patience that has been coming through these readings in the last week is very strong. So I would recommend, and I am also, this is directed at myself too, and many other people around me, to not lose sight of that, because you don't want to take things out of the oven before they're done, right? You want to make sure things are finished and they are at their full ripeness before we harvest. And there is something to be gained by certain people, I am sure, by convincing us, right, the people, to harvest before it's time, right? Because then it's not, our medicine is not as potent when we do that. So, or there's a bitterness to it. That's also a way to look at it. So here is today's chart, and as we see here, we're going to go back a little bit and look at. There's one last. Oops, wrong way. So there was one last real transit, aspect before the moon slipped into Pisces last night. And I had some wild dreams last night, very wild. So I'm not surprised, with that, because the moon did slip into Pisces and was squaring her own nodal axis almost right away. But this I want to show you real quick here before we move on to the moon in Pisces and the transits involved, is the moon was in a sextile to asteroid Juno, who is now, I'm going to show you on this chart, make sure you can see it. Okay. You can see that asteroid Juno is in the very last degree of Sagittarius. This is, and remember, we talked about how Juno kind of represents this closed system of cause and effect, of trust and betrayal, right? That there is, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? We're talking about some very basic laws of physics here, and of the universe. So in terms of Juno, right, she represents our action in this closed system, and how it has a lot to do with our own action and how we respond to those situations. Whenever there is a change in the system, right, there is an equal and opposite reaction to that change. And it really depends on who we are and what our motivation is, that, what shape that takes and what it looks like. But it is a closed system. That's become very clear, at least to me, with Juno. She's in Sagittarius. This is the home territory of the husband, right? Jupiter or Zeus. So I think this has been an interesting transit of asteroid Juno through Sagittarius in the weeks and months, because this is Sagittarius is about what things mean, and when they have meaning, it actually is the fire and the catalyzing energy that creates something new when it has actual meaning behind it. So this degree is really represents the crystallization, the ultimate crystallization of that meaning into some sort of symbolic representation, and in a very distinct form, and in an authority form as well. Are we ready to step into an identity or a role that symbolizes and represents the meaning of which, we're operating under socially or collectively? So everybody is operating under a social paradigm of meaning, and it's not all the same right now, but we are all now at a point where we have to, at the very least, stand in accordance with, the symbol, like some sort of representation. So the actual Sabian symbol of the last degree of Sagittarius is the Pope, right? And I'm not suggesting it's the literal Pope, because that is just so loaded at this point and has so many really nefarious connections to it. So, but what it's saying is that it's the representative of the religion, right? The personal, actual representation of the religion, the dogma, the philosophy, something. And we as people step into that role and become the embodiment in real time, in a physical form of that collective paradigm. So there's a sense here that we are in response almost to this in response to these, this closed system that demands to be balanced no matter what. We're going to each come in and become formed into something, right? Embody this wisdom. We're going to embody this tradition. We're going to embody this religion or this dogma, whatever, this belief system. We're going to start embodying it. And so when we talk about the moon at the very last degree of Aquarius here, making a sextile, right? A sextile, the 60-degree angle that we would have over here to Juno. The last degree of Aquarius is becoming very acutely aware of the spiritual collectivism, the spiritual collective in which every individual mind is merged into this unanimous consciousness, right? This is that laser point of Aquarius. We're at the very last degree of Aquarius. It represents the fact that when you have emerged successfully from your own metamorphosis, you in fact are now completely in line with this merged unanimous consciousness of all of these individuals coming together. This is the mastery degree of Aquarius. So it does require, on some level, that we each, in our intuition and our feeling, that if we have emerged successfully from our own metamorphosis, right, and become merged into this unanimous consciousness of not the meaning of it, but what is, because that's what Aquarius is. Sagittarius still represents the human meaning that we've created as a result of our collection together, our production together. That and it's variable. It is variable based on the people involved and what they believe and where that comes from. Aquarius is the beyond that. It is the future, and it also is the ability to hold not only the meaning, but the power that even brought that meaning forward in total alignment with the self. And so if we can come into this awareness within ourselves in this particular sextile, and this was overnight, so it's not like it's something that's going to be happening. This is something that happened overnight, late last night, early this morning, while many of us were probably asleep. We apply this, and it will influence and reconcile a lot of how we come to embody ourselves and what we feel responsible to embody. That's the other thing, because Juno is about that closed system. So no matter what, it's going to cause some sort of shift in the dynamic if it changes. So, but there's a responsibility that we have here to participate. And so we're going to embody that which we, as a symbol of what we actually believe. But I feel like that it was really very strongly influenced, and we invested ourselves if we came to this kind of really to the 0 point. And that is the 1111 gateway, is the 0 point. It's the Fool. And the 30 degrees of Aquarius really in its essence represents that 0 point of everyone coming together into this cosmic and unanimous consciousness. So it really does depend on how we've walked through that gateway. What's going to be the what's going to happen to that closed system, especially when we step into an embodied symbol of the collective paradigm that we're operating under. I know that that's like a mouthful, but it's important to really unravel a lot of this so that we understand how we get to these conclusions. I could just sit here and tell you these things and just be like, this is what you should think. But that's not what I do. So, we want to understand all of the facets of this archetypal language and how it's weaving together into a narrative. So there was a really important moment overnight here that had to do with this gateway, this 1111 gateway, and our ability to merge with it, this oneness. And when we do that, we can, again, like invest it into our responsibility, our contractual obligation to stand in embodiment of what we believe, right? And that will make a difference. It will shift the scales in this closed system of what it means to be in a relationship, what it means to be in a commitment, and how that there is, it's inseparable, right? Every action that we take is going to impact the other side of that equation, no matter what. And so we want to make sure that we are aligned exactly where we want to be. So when things shift, we are fully prepared. And I promise you they will. They will. They already are. But now it's going to be, I think it's going to really start ramping up. So the moon comes into Pisces overnight. So the dream state was just nuts. Oh my gosh, there were some really bizarre things happening. So the first thing that happened, though, speaking of bizarre things, we have the square with our own nodal axis, okay, in Gemini and Sagittarius, still sitting at this 2 degree. Talked about this before, how we're really being drawn at a soul level to move towards what ultimately is kind of like a surrendered openness, kind of a very... It's like little kids waiting for Santa to come fill the stockings. And even more than that, it's the process of that happening and being patient and waiting, which seems so counterintuitive to so much that is happening around us. I think there is a real strong drive to do something, especially if you're just now like going, oh, what is happening? Or you've been under the impression that there's some savior that's going to come in and like take care of it, and you realize that everything's getting stripped away layer by layer. But there is something here that is for our own evolutionary growth and our own soul's growth to be patient again and to be open to what is being offered to us in terms of blessings, in terms of rewards, whatever, however you want to, you don't have to literally think about it as a reward or a blessing, but it's being open to what, to receive that which we have taken the initiative to explore. Now, the square here is that we, that really puts us out there, doesn't it? And so there is a tendency with the moon, especially that 2nd degree of Pisces, to hide ourselves, right? We want to hide ourselves because part of being completely immersed in the full range of experience at a very basic universal level is that you're open. You are open to those who are trying to get something from you. This is why empaths and really strong Pisces people that don't know how to manage their Pisces nature, especially a moon in Pisces, if you're not aware of it, and you have a strong Pleiadian element too, this is where it goes, you leave yourself open essentially, or you're open to like the narcissistic tendencies and anything else that is just trying to, come and gather from, everything that is available to have. So while we're leaving ourselves, we're along this like mind and higher mind axis in terms of our soul's journey. There's a part of us, there's a very sensitive part of us that's just like, I kind of want to just like go hide in this tree over here until these hunters pass by, because I'm small and they're very big and they are on the hunt. So I also do feel this, like there is, I definitely am feeling it in this moment. And this is something that I really felt. Look at where this is. This was first thing this morning. I woke up and I was like, I want to go back to bed. I don't want to do this anymore. Like it's, that was the general feeling. And it's transient, right? The moon passed by. It's important that we at least allow ourselves the opportunities to feel these things, even if they are just momentary, and then they move on. Like, we don't have to attach ourselves to them. Although with the moon in Pisces, it's really hard not to just identify ourselves with these feelings. But it's like, if you put yourself out there in this mental way and heading in this direction that is very much about the discovery and the exploration of what is and what we know, what we think we know, and being open to receiving something in this way, then that does leave us out in the open. And I think there was this moment where it was just like, oh, I just want to go back into the tree and hide. And that's okay. That's okay. And I think that that's going to come up in different ways throughout the weekend, because again, it's about how it's not so much about standing up and obeying our own conscience. That's really important, and that's going to be coming up over and over again. And how it's forming a base, like a foundational base with where Neptune and Pisces is, right? Which is about completely surrendering to it and being able to feel it, literally feel the experience of what newness is coming. But we also have to accept the responsibility and the consequences of that. And I assure you that there are consequences, as we already know. We were watching it unfold, and it's going to, the more that people step into this particular aspect of saying no, the more consequences there will be to balance it out, right? Here's Juno again, that closed system. So again, we have to be very clear with ourselves what paradigm we're embodying and stepping into that role within, because it will cause an adjustment no matter what. And that's just all there is to that. So, but there is, I do feel that moment of just like, you know what, I'm just going to go back to bed and put the cover over my head and just go and not even acknowledge any of this is happening. And that's okay, right? And it was momentary, and it's very normal and human to want to protect yourself in the midst of being completely energetically open to everything. So that was first thing this morning, in moon in Pisces, right? So then we have the sun trine Neptune right after that. That happened, let's see here. We're finding ourselves, around this time, actually, like in this moment, like right now, actually, it's happening. This moon or sun in Scorpio in a trine to Neptune in Pisces. So this water trine, I mean, it's also very inspiring, right? Very inspiring, very magical. A lot of, muse inspiring us and to inspire us to align with our conscience and not align with the values of an authoritarian society or an aggressive society. There's a lot of inspiration that's coming from Neptune right now, and it's within us, right? Neptune is still retrograde, so we have this opportunity to really work with this energy within us. And so there's a base here as we find our voice to say no, like at a collective level, and to really express ourselves through this. This is a beautiful moment. It really is. But it's not going to come without, like I said, without the adjustment in a cause and effect relationship. And that's if you have, see, that moon in Pisces first thing this morning was really important, because we do have to accept the reality that when we stand up to the oppressors and say no, they're not just going to be like, okay, and then just turn around and walk away. No, it's not going to work that way. We have to be prepared to accept the consequences. And I think having the opposite experience of that in a moment that's just like, you know what, it would just be just as easy to go hide and not be seen, right? And not be vulnerable as well, is a moment. But that's not where we are headed at a soul level. That's what the nodal axis of the moon truly represents. But it's okay to have that feeling, because then the next moment here right now is this trine. So really influencing, very inspiring, very finding a foundational support and traction for our own voice and our expression from, really what comes down to it is like a full surrender to source, to God, and to our own ability to feel what is coming and the newness that is coming. So, I mean, Neptune will eventually transit into Aries in a number of years. And I think that's going to be a major turning point, right? Because then you have Neptune coming into the beginning again, the beginning of the cycle. So that's the trine, Sun, trine, Neptune. And this is going to happen over, and, Mercury is going to come make this trine. Mars is going to make this trine up through the end of 2021. So this is just the beginning, right? With this, with us obeying our conscience and saying no to authoritarianism. This is a cycle that's going to keep coming back around. Now, the moon will come along later today, is going to be in a sextile to Venus. Now, Venus in Capricorn, boy, we really need her right now. And I'm a big fan of Venus in Capricorn personally. That's just my preference. Everybody's got different, different things that they prefer, and that's okay. Venus in Capricorn is really directing us to find the value and the security and comfort in some ways in what we're responsible for together, and the crystallization that comes about as a result of our group integration, right? Capricorn is what we create together, and the unfolding of the fractal geometry of reality, right? And so the value in our relationships, in the people we love, in the projects and resources that are valuable to us, all of those Venusian things is really focused on not just our own comfort, but everybody else. Right? The comfort of not even the comfort of everybody, but the responsibility of what we create together in a very material way, right? In terms of institutions and the economy as a whole and governments as a whole, whatever it is that we create through our meaning that actually crystallizes into a form and a structure is Capricorn. And Venus here now is drawing our attention in a very direct, palpable, material way to what that is. And when she meets Pluto, she's going to meet Pluto and then station retrograde right after. So she's going to be here for a number of months. And so we'll have plenty of time to really feel into that. And it's not, as much as I value this particular transit, as a person, I also recognize how difficult this is going to be, because Venus does not like to be uncomfortable, and sometimes you have to do things, or you have to do things, or you have to step into particular positions of authority or step out of your comfort zone in order to, and Venus doesn't like to be out of her comfort zone, does she? So I also accept and am fully aware of the fact that that's going to be a big challenge for a lot of people, is to have to step out of your comfort zone for the sake of what is best for everybody. And that, again, you can see how that is expressed based on where you find yourself in your value system and your integrity, right? Because what is best for everybody is not the same in terms of each of our individual conception of that. And it depends on what authority you really are following, and that will manifest itself. So the moon in Pisces later today makes a sextile with Venus in Capricorn. And one of the things that is part of being in a collective organization, in a society, in a larger, if Cancer in the fourth house is like your immediate family and your clan or your tribe, Capricorn is the larger political structure of those things, or the larger social structure that holds many of these things together. Part of being in that situation is that there are individuals within that structure who are able to very seamlessly, in some ways, be able to access the truth of the situation and act as a mouthpiece for the revelation of that truth to determine where we're going. So yesterday, Venus was sitting at this threshold, as we talked about, walking through the gateway, right? The Sphinx gate, as we saw with the never-ending story, right? That's the imagery that I was using. So we were standing at that threshold, making sure that everything was exactly where it needed to be, because we can't risk going through it. We can't risk the safety going through it. And now Venus is like a literal channel, right? She's like a literal mouthpiece. And so that literal mouthpiece can be our relationships to each other, to our families, to our, whatever is valuable to us in this life is represented by Venus. And so, at the threshold of where we're going, we can have a vision of the essential elements that are part of what is as of yet unknown, right, in the next step of evolution. So we do have a sense, we can very much tap into what's coming. And I think it's going to be tapping into what's coming as a result of what it feels like in our senses, right? Do we feel uncomfortable? Are we scared? Or are we feeling secure? Are we feeling balanced, right? Do we feel like there's justice and harmony in our lives and in our resources? All of those things represent Venus, or Venus represents all of those types of experiences. So through those things, what comes through is this revelation on some level. And it in this sextile to the moon in Pisces in this moment, it's like we can, if we are standing uncompromisingly for truth, right? There's a spiritual blessing that strengthens us, but we have to stand in that truth. And I think where we're going to find that truth is going to come directly through our palpable reality and what is part of our life that we value, and what that revelation, it'll come through that experience. And we can apply that and invest that into our own feeling, and vice versa. And then we get this, we get some sort of blessing, we get some sort of knowing, we get some sort of feeling, right? Moon in Pisces, literal feeling, intuitive feeling of that will strengthen us if we stand uncompromisingly for truth, and vice versa. If we have this feeling within us, we're standing very, very firm in this. Again, we can invest this into our experience of our actual valued life, and what allows us to feel safe, secure, and comfortable, and at peace. And this will allow a revelation to come through in a much more physical and material way, right? Moon in Pisces is so nebulous, right? That it's just a feeling that you can't even really articulate. Well, Venus is going to articulate it for us, and it's going to come through how we feel in a 5 sense type of way in the world around us. This is really important. I think a lot of people are going to start really waking up right now and feeling it. And there are going to be situations coming at them all throughout this weekend and into the week and throughout the week that people are going to be like, what is going on? You can already see it, right? You can already see it happening. So the moon comes around, speaking of the moon, right? The moon comes around today and then comes into a trine with Mars. So there's all of these Scorpio trines with the moon in Pisces right now. So there is a lot of really strong, foundational, harmonious connection in our feelings, right? In the depth of our feeling, and also in the feeling experience of everything as well. So we can tap into that and be able to use that as a way to anchor, in some way, emotionally anchor what we are discovering and investigating in the depth of our society and our relationships, because that's ultimately what Scorpio is showing us. So the moon comes around, is in a trine to Mars much later tonight, tonight, at 9 degrees to 9 degrees. And this oh, that's very interesting, actually. hold on one second. So where is this? Number one, this moon is in direct conjunction to Pallas Athena, which we talked about already, is that this strategy of mastering our spiritual abilities is very, very strong right now. And now that she's moved, this asteroid is moved direct. And so now we've had a lot of opportunity to really conceptualize what this means for us internally, and now it's time to put it into action. Okay, to be able to develop our powers and our skills by transcending very natural limitations. And what are natural limitations? Well, I mean, like they would be the material reality. So we're talking about the spiritual powers and skills, energetic powers and skills, and our mastery of them. So it's we're manifesting, or mastering, let's put it that way. We're mastering our difficulties while we're transcending, like, the limitations of our what's right in front of us, our local reality, right? We're transcending them and being able to master these difficulties through this process, okay? And the moon meeting Pallas Athena at this moment is giving us a direct line right in. You know what I mean? Like we get to have an impression or an intuition or a very strong feeling of what those strategies could be for us individually. And I think knowing where this is in your chart is a good indication of what area this will happen. So for me, for instance, right, this is still my first house. If I use a house system that is a cusp house, right? If you're using whole sign astrology where there's no house cusp and it's just the archetype of each house as it goes along, then it would be second house, right? So it really depends on, which chart you're using and how you're looking at it. But the idea is that it's in the realm of my personality, who I am as a person, what makes me unique in the face of everything else, then I'm really going to find my strategy here for how to transcend these difficulties and these limitations through my spiritual and transcendental cosmic strategies and the mastery. So the trine to Mars here is very interesting because it's going to also be related to a very ambitious drive to reunite with that which has brought us together in the first place, right? This sense of camaraderie that is in Scorpio, and with Mars here, we really want to act on it, and actualize ourselves within these human relationships that are based on a common experience. This is really, really important, based on a common experience. And so if we're able to transcending these limitations is going to, in some ways, allow us the space and the lack of distraction in some ways to go into and act on, in some ways, this fellowship, right? Bringing us back together, helping us to realize what it is that we have in common versus what it is that we don't have in common. And we're acting on that. And when we act on that, it's going to really this is a powerful in and of itself. This is a powerful strategy, is to find where we overlap as opposed to where we disagree. And Mars is just not going to do anything but go for it, right? And be very forceful about it, and possibly very aggressive about it. But in this sense, it's also very, very brave and very courageous. And really, that divine masculine aspect is what makes the world go round initially, right? It's the impulse to be, that's the beginning. It's the spark, right? And it's that spark that pushes us forward into a realm that wants to find where we overlap and to find where we have a common experience. And we do that. I think that's where we're going to find our strategy come right into our awareness, right into our intuitive awareness. But it's going to require that we actually find the place where we overlap. And gets very difficult the more that that crowbar separation keeps trying to put us into these camps. And some people are putting themselves there, of course. But the awakening is happening so exponentially fast, which means that there is a scramble to mitigate that as well. So it's a good thing Mars is here, because it really gives us that drive to actually find where we overlap, and to find our comrades, and to create experience, and to acknowledge the experiences that we can come together and work through, as opposed to what separates us. Man, what a strategy. Very powerful strategy. And we can also, again, utilize that mastery of difficult situations to be able to find this, right? This is incredible. So this is by the end of tonight. So coming into the weekend this is an incredible moment here, coming into the weekend. So when we come into the weekend, which is the 13th, Saturday the 13th, so I'm going to close this real quick. Let's see here. When I come into Saturday the 13th, just be ready. This is another one of those, there's another one of those, safety valves for aggression where the sun is. So also, and this has come about a couple times already, and I know exactly the last time it happened for me when Venus was there. I remember exactly what happened. And Vesta had crossed this point not that long ago. There is a safety valve for a natural aggression that comes from this realm together, right? Because we want to protect, and we also have natural aggressive instincts, and we need to create something socially to allow for that to be expressed. Boy, oh boy. I don't know what this is going to look like, but it's going to come through so strong, because the sun represents our voice, right? How we find our expression. It's going to be very strong. Okay. This is Saturday. And Mercury is at the point of the new moon, right? 12 to 13 degrees of Scorpio. So now, as the actual scientist, as the actual researcher, as the actual alchemist in some ways, is going into the lab, like for real this time. We're taking our mental ability and our conceptualization into the lab to really get to the root of something, while at the same time the sun, representing our expression, is going to be a release valve through our voices, right? Through our voices, through our expression of ourself and our passion. This is going to be incredible. Wow. I'm really curious to see how this unfolds. Let's see here. Another thing I'd like to bring up real quick is that if you look over in this chart again real quick, is Black Moon Lilith has stationed direct now. If you track the true Lilith, then it's stationed direct. And it's come back over that point again as of today, or tomorrow, I'm sorry, tomorrow, of learning to discern, right, what's important, because our survival kind of depends on it now. So when it was retrograde, we were still kind of like really deeply within ourselves, and kind of maybe investigating this process within ourselves. Now it's direct. Black Moon Lilith will be direct at this point, and starting to our self-preservation is going to come through. This dark feminine is going to come through us in terms of what it is that we find valuable to us, right? What is it in our immediate environment that we, and in the world around us, right? The objective world that we find valuable, and learning to discern. Now that's getting turned on. Let's see here. So the moon, first thing happens, tomorrow morning, the moon comes into a trine with Mercury at the new moon point. Well, not quite, just before it. The moon comes into that trine. So right here, 11 to 12 of Pisces and Scorpio. So this is an initiation process. We're going to feel an initiation as Mercury is starting to come to realize what the real hierarchy is, right? What it really means for everybody to be at the highest level of their relational, congregation, whatever it is, like the idea that in order to have international peace, for instance, right, all of these ambassadors come together into this type of I don't know, like an embassy ball or something, right? Some sort of collective of ambassadors coming together, because what it does is represents the height of the relational cohesion that's necessary to maintain a peace, right? So Mercury at this point is really addressing the, what it takes and the highest level. And it's very hierarchical, right? Showing like the flowering of culture in terms of international or interpersonal relationships. That's another way to look at it, at its highest level, at its most active in some ways. But it's also very hierarchical, it's very institutionalized, and Mercury is like, I'm really seeing this. I'm really thinking about this. I am able to communicate about what this is. And again, it's about, oh boy, this is an initiation, right? Because within us, at the same time, we will feel very much that we are being tested. Our character is being tested based on, what Mercury, our mind is able to really wrap itself around. And in Scorpio, it's going into the depths of these situations, really understanding or attempting to understand, or at least see what the arrangement actually is, what it means to have social cohesion and what it takes in order to produce that, which means there has to be this consistent effort to come together and negotiate things. And so, oh boy, there's going to be a test of our character in this moment. But I also do feel like that our emotions will have some measure of rational, empirical thought or logic attached to it, at least, right? Because it's all water, Mercury and the moon and Pisces and Scorpio. So it's all water and feeling based. And it's Mercury that has the capacity to go into the underworld and come back out without being trapped. This is going to be the thing that keeps us from like totally dissolving ourselves into, the test of our character, right? It's one thing to be initiated. It's another to actually have to go through the hazing process. And you can look at that in any number of ways. Again, you look at where these things are happening in your chart and you'll get a pretty good idea of what area of your life this is going to pop up in. So being tested, being examined, being initiated into some type of, much more spiritual and cosmic consciousness. But Mercury is going to allow us in that moment to at least be able to see things through a lens that is not trapped in the emotion of it. And that's really, really important, because it's all kind of a show, right? We all know that it's a show. So when we move on from there, the moon comes right along and comes into a sextile with Uranus, which is going to be really important, because then we're going to see Mercury and Mars too over the week are going to be in opposition to Uranus. So this sextile right here is a really good opportunity for us to use our will, our will and the will of source moving through us, which is really what this represents. And when we are able to do that and to use that will to meet basic challenges, either inside or outside of us, and use our will to become a symbol of courage for other people who are going to follow in our footsteps, right? It's when we are really a channel for the will of God or source or the universe or the cosmic consciousness, right? The spiritual nature. If we are really allowing that to move seamlessly through us and use that will to actually meet basic challenges, again, we can invest this and reconcile the fact that we do have this baggage that we can't take through this gateway right now or ever. And it's within us, right? Uranus is still retrograde, so we're still kind of like working with this energy internally and within our own awareness, and feeling these disruptions and these reorientations within ourselves right now. And so we can find the will, right? When we become a channel for the will of source to move through us, not only can we meet basic challenges, we also can find the capacity to release that which is holding us back from walking through this gateway, the 1111 gateway, which is to be in union, right? It's to be in oneness. And so Pisces allows us to feel the experience of that. And so this is a really important moment to reconcile these things, right? To invest them and then find open to a whole, you know what I mean? To all directions at that point, a harmonious connection that allows us to move forward. Because right after that is when Mercury comes into the opposition to Uranus, right? We're going to need this sextile because immediately after that, the tension between Mercury that's like, I'm going into the lab now. I'm going to start really getting to the root of what holds us all together and what we're producing together, and to actually put the dots together, right? Connect the dots, put the pieces of the puzzle together. We're going to use our minds to do this. And again, while we're doing that at a personal and cognitive level, which is Mercury, Uranus, which is the next octave of that because it's the collective third eye opening and allowing us to be fully connected singularly to source, is, again, it's going to, the tension between these two things is like, even with what we produce, even with what we, have the urge to produce or to come to the truth or knowledge about, is even that is possibly going to be creating baggage that we can't take with us. So this tension here, we have to find the midpoint. We can't be so hyper fixated on getting to the root and getting to what's under the surface and really being able to dig up and communicate all of the secrets and all of the stuff in the subconscious and in the shadow, right? We can't keep endlessly just playing around in this realm, right? Or thinking about it all the time without it creating some sort of karma or baggage or, reinforcing the duality as well. So it's important that we're going into that space, but Uranus, again, will pull us right out and be like, there's only so much ambition to get to the truth of things that you can have before it's too much to carry through into the new, into the oneness, into the unification. So, and I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't do one or the other. That's the whole point of the opposition. You find your fulcrum, you find the balance so that you aren't getting pulled in one direction or another, because we still have to be in Scorpio season. There's no getting around that. So Uranus is very powerful, but at the same time, there is a lot over here that is balancing it out and requiring us to really put our own initiative, our own thoughts, and our own expression into what's going on down there, right? We do need on some level to be aware of this, because we have to also be aware of it to know that this is going to be the area of the South Node in 2022. So we also have to know what we're moving away from, which is just endless, the scorpionic realm. It's very powerful here, and we have to move forward into something new. And this is where the Pleiadian revival is really going to come into play. So that's Mercury opposite Uranus. Then the moon comes into a conjunction with Neptune after that. So then we'll really be able to just have a direct experience to what is. And I would say that looking at it's going to be during the day, so that'll be an interesting connection, because it'll be such a, again, totally inspiring, a completely completely intuitively connected to the realm of cosmic consciousness, to be inspired. It's very magical. There's a lot of imagination involved here. There is really strong connection into the karma, into the Akashic field that we have an opportunity to connect to on Saturday. Excellent. Excellent. Also, very easy to lose ourselves in this, right? Completely easy to lose ourselves in this. So that's something else to consider as well, that it's a momentary experience. So allow it to just move through you, because I think that there's going to be so much inspiration, and it's just going to be such a beautiful spiritual moment to just be like, oh, just feel into, because it's in that feeling that we bring it into the next stage and in the next cycle. What we feel and how we feel about it, right, is a big part of what comes into the new cycle, right? And so this is going to allow for that as well on Saturday. This is tomorrow, right? Moon comes into conjunction. And then finally, the moon is in a trine, right? Here's that other trine to the sun in Scorpio and Neptune, or I'm Pisces, sorry. So this trine is going to give us the ability to channel that, that safety valve is going to be part of our expression, but this trine to the moon, it's like, it's going to be nothing short of a release of the highest order coming into our direct experience, but it's going to come through some very powerful expression. But the trine, this trine to the moon in this moment is creating a foundation, right? It's through this release valve that we will be able to and it's both sides of it, right? It's also through the ability to directly connect intuitively, emotionally to the mandate, right? Whatever the mandate is, where it's coming from. It's the idea that we have to bring down to the level of everyday life the clear realizations made manifest, right, in this massive peak experience. And the peak experience is going to come through some sort of expression that is a safety valve, right? It's going to be very intense. It's going to come through very strongly, but these things are very much supporting each other in a very foundational way. We won't have to do much to get this trine, this water trine between the moon and the sun. We won't have to do anything to gather the harmony and the balance and the stability of it. It's just going to be so powerful. It's just going to come right through us. And I think that this is, again, really, really important to be aware of with all of this Pisces and Scorpio energy over the weekend. Very watery, very intense emotionally, very spiritual as well, and not a lot of boundary necessarily, because we're talking about depth, fixed water and then mutable water with Pisces, so it can turn into anything. That's the other thing. So we have to, again, go back to that moment of today of just like, I want to hide. There's something to be said for being able to master ourselves in this realm so that we don't get totally taken over by what may come through all of our voices. Everybody's going to be different. So that's, by the end of Saturday, that's going to be something else. I'll tell you what. So when we come into Sunday, this is where we start to transubstantiate that aggressive energy, that safety valve that's come through. Now it's time to start putting it towards a higher purpose with where the sun is in Scorpio. And we're going to find here that the moon is going to make a sextile with Pluto before, we'll go back a couple hours here on Sunday morning, overnight, it looks like, right? Overnight. In the dream state. So moon in Pisces making a sextile to Pluto in Capricorn. Pay attention again to your dreams on Saturday night, Sunday morning, because you're going to get a lot of insight into what it is that we need to, very cathartic release of something, right? And overcoming some very corruptive influences. And so the power of the soul to initiate this catharsis as a means to purify ourselves is going to come through. And we can, again, it's going to be Pluto at the social level really instigating this, right? And if we are aware of it, and we are aware of what Pluto represents at this point, the fact that it is destroying everything we rely upon in terms of our social and cultural traditions and artistic processes and all of the beautiful things that we have built over time that have allowed us a very comfortable ability to connect with each other and to source, that's all going away, right? We know that. That's the slow burn of Pluto. If we can take that and apply that to where each of us is, going through possibly some sort of personal catharsis, it's going to be where Pluto is at the social level that will initiate the personalized catharsis, the feeling of it. So again, pay attention to your dreams. I have a feeling that that's going to be an incredibly insightful transit, that when we are not accessing the conscious mind so much, it will become very clear to us what type of catharsis, what type of purification is being initiated by the release and the destruction of the old guard. Okay. And we might also feel into it in the external world as well, but I have a feeling that we're going to get a really powerful insight into this in the astral on Saturday night, Sunday morning. Let's see here. The moon comes into a trine with asteroid Vesta at the very last degree, or 29 degrees of Scorpio and Pisces. Okay, so Vesta would be over here at the very end of Scorpio. The moon at 20, it's actually 28 to 29. Let's go back. 28 to 29, it's going to be in a trine to Vesta. Vesta is really pointing towards love as the principle of redemption. This is what is going to hold us together. This is the fire at the center of our soul and the center of us. And the meaning is very much about love as the principle of redemption. This is so important. And the trine to the moon at that moment is really going to allow for everybody to kind of differentiate into their own particular frequency of how to express this love as a principle of redemption. We're all going to go off in our own ways, just like when light goes through a spectrum and then shows itself as the rainbow and all of the different colors are vibrating at a different frequency. We're all different. Okay. And we're going to become very personally aware of this. We're all different and we all have different frequencies, but we're all coming from the same source, which is light, right? Visible light, for instance, right? But then you see that it's actually differentiated into various different frequencies, evidenced by the color of the light that we see. And this is really important. If we have got to wrap ourselves personally around this concept so that we can fully engage in the idea that what is going to hold us together, what's going to sustain us at a communal level, and what we can do to be of service is to really embody the fact that love is the principle of redemption, right? This is going to be so important. As things get really crazy, as things get more intense and heated, this is going to be more important than ever. And to realize that we are, in fact, all different. And everybody's got their own unique frequency that they came here to be part of in their own journey. So we have to accept that too. And that is difficult. It is not easy. The thing about the end of Pisces is that it is one of the hardest places to be because there's nothing. You feel completely dissolved into and submerged in something where you don't even know yourself anymore. This is a moment where you start to realize that we all are, in fact, our own unique being, even if we do come from the same source. This will allow us to really come into a connection with love as the principle of redemption. It's always about love. and, seeking our own redemption, or holding space for others who are stepping into this redemption for themselves. It's really important that we acknowledge that everybody is different. And so this is this has the potential to really just like blast the bifurcation out of the water at the end of the weekend. Now, the moon is going to then square Juno right after this. And now they are in the last, Juno's in the last degree of Sagittarius, as we talked about. And this is about really finding your, it's like true archetypalization, right? As opposed to embodying the symbol that represents the collective value system that is meaningful to you, right? Meaningful to society. This is way more, the moon is way more about, the archetypalization and us resembling and more almost like morphing into that which resembles the ideal of greatness, But it represents archetypalization because it's the last moment before we come into the pure seed of the next cycle. And the square to Juno is, again, that's a closed system of the scales. And when we step into an embodiment, there will be a shift in the dynamic that we can't get away from. And the square here is as we each start to identify ourselves with the archetype of what it is we want to create anew. This is going to be difficult. That's why it's a square, but boy, we can really learn something about ourselves if we lean into this on Sunday. So the moon then comes into Aries, speaking of which, and so then we find a rebirth in some ways, or the birth of a new cycle and all of the potential that is part of that. And so the first thing the moon does after it comes into Aries is come into a sextile with Rahu and a trine to the South Node, or K2. So we're going to have to, I would say in this moment, have a very objective position about things and be a mirror, not only for ourselves, but for other people in terms of human nature and not taking, I don't want to say not taking it seriously, but the thing about the comedian, because this is the Sabian symbol of 2 degrees Aries, is a comedian reveals human nature. What is the role of the comedian? Yes, to make us laugh. But if you really are a fan of comedy as an art form, you know that what their real magic is that they hold the mirror up to us and they use humor to disarm us while at the same time kind of making us look at ourselves objectively. And so we can, if we're able to really do this, right, and be the mirror either for ourselves or other people in our life and do this through our own emotional projections, right? The moon is, we're reflecting and feeling, right? At the same time, we feel it and reflect it back. And we are a reflection of what we feel a lot of times, right? We project out what we're feeling, just like the moon reflects the light of the sun when it's time. So when we do this, we can really be open to the spiritual blessings and the rewards and what is coming to us and being open to it. This is the journey that our souls are all on right now. And this is where we're heading, is in terms of this being open to what's coming. And there is something that we can really reconcile here if we allow ourselves to be the mirror for that. If we can be the mirror for that in a way that's disarming, but also very honest and objective, I feel like that we can really reconcile what is in fact coming and show other people. Boy, that's an important thing too, that we are reflecting it back to others in this moment and showing the objective reality through our own emotional state. This is one heck of a weekend. Juno then enters Capricorn. So we've gone from the embodiment in our own self as to the meaning of the world that we are part of into that first crystallization of what that means, which means somebody stepping into a position of power and authority. So what's interesting is that Juno does represent this closed system of balance of cause and effect coming into Capricorn, which means that there is in fact no more catalyzing and alchemy. It comes into actual form now, and we've gone from the spirit of the law now to the letter of the law, and there's a lot less wiggle room in terms of this when it comes to Capricorn. So I feel like the hammer in some ways of justice is going to drop at this point, and being able to reflect back out a feeling and a sense of, objectiveness, and also being a mirror for people is going to be very painful, but also very important. And then right after that, Saturn comes into a trine with asteroid Ceres over here in Gemini in the very end of Sunday, which is still retrograde, and now has moved into a degree that's way more dynamic than what it had been, because now it's like, revolting against the unbalanced privilege, right? It's the Sabian symbol is a bunch of aroused strikers surround a factory, right? It's going on strike. It's standing up. It is expression that, it's expression that comes from a discovery that things are not equal or balanced, and there's only one way that goes, which is attempting to address that and balance it back out. And Ceres in a trine to Saturn, it's like Saturn as the Lord of Time, as the boundary of reality, and the authority that really shapes and structures us, especially in Aquarius, right? Of where we're going, what it may look like, this basic structure of what it may look like and what we can be inspired by is going to really give the backbone to to Gaia specifically, and on an internalized level to find balance against what is unbalanced. Ooh, wow. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some actual upheaval again on an physical level. But also to remember that Ceres is in Gemini, so it is really about the idea of things and the conceptualization of things as well. And so our conception of what it is that sustains us, what is a balanced ecosystem, what is a balanced biome, right? And what represents that balance is going to be something that we all kind of internally have the opportunity to connect with. And I've stressed so many times how important it is that we are energetically connecting to the grid of the planet in whatever way makes sense to each of us and our own unique ability to do so, because and it's Saturn that's going to provide right now. The Saturn, depending on whom do you serve, right? Which aspect of Saturn is relevant to you? Is Saturn are you worshiping time? Are you worshiping materialism? Is that, that is the very essence of Satanism, right? Is the worship of materialism. Because when that is the end of the line for you, then power, authority, resources, being in charge, all of those things are what you worship and value, because it's all about survival of the fittest, right? That is, boy, oh boy, did you know that Darwin was a Freemason? Just saying. Man, there's been so many things in the last 6 months, especially, that I've just been like, wow, I would have never allowed myself the space to really question these things in the past. So is that, or do you acknowledge what Saturn really does represent, which is the the fact that we live in a material realm and time and space are relative to here, and that Capricorn represents the fractal geometry that is impacted and influenced and created by what? Our consciousness, all right? So there is something more beyond the material realm. If you are operating from that level, then yes, Saturn in Aquarius is going to show us what we can be, like the highest version of what we could be collectively, and anchor that. It's like a piece of rebar that you put in the ground when you go to Burning Man, because you have dust storms that will pull all of your shelters over if you don't pound this 3-foot long piece of rebar in the ground. And that's what Saturn could be, in terms of an anchor or something to tether ourselves to in terms of the human collective and where we're going, the evolved human collective, and in Trine to Ceres, right, about what it means to be conceptually balanced, what it means to, what it means to have a balanced ecosystem within ourselves, right? It starts within ourselves. If we don't have a balanced ecosystem within our own selves, how can we expect to support the planet herself to be in a balanced ecosystem? Ooh, that's a big one. That's hitting home really strong right now. So that's how the weekend kind of ends, is this particular trine here. So it's powerful. It's very powerful, and the weight of it is no joke right now. And the weight of the water, the pressure of the emotions is also no joke. And the swamp aspect of the last decan of Scorpio is very real. And if we do not account for that, we easily get lost in that. So when we look at the rest of the week, we can see here that we have some other aspects that are going to really challenge us. So number one, we're going to find that Venus in Capricorn will be in a, let's go back a couple hours here, because she's going to square Chiron. Now, Chiron has moved into a new degree at this point in its retrograde. So from 8 to 9 degrees. Now, we've been working with this particular aspect that has us really challenged to allow in a new symbolic representation of how we identify ourselves, each of us, right? That Chiron is bringing to the surface, who am I if I let go of this identity? And you're going to see here that the moon is going to meet Chiron at the same time that it is in a square to Venus, right? All in the same very end to the 8 to 9 degree area, as you see here. So it's really gonna amplify the trigger of this in square to Venus that is having us. Boy, this is a really important moment here, and this is going to be first thing Monday morning, right? Overnight, possibly Sunday night into Monday morning. So again, pay attention to your dreams, because this is where I think, especially with the moon involved, this is where it's going to really show itself if it's still, if you're still asleep. I find if you're, over on the other side of the pond from where I'm at and beyond, this is going to be early morning. So if you are doing your morning routine as in terms of like prayer, meditation, just be very, very aware of yourself energetically, because what this is going to challenge is the responsibility that we all have to being in attunement with the universe, right? The attunement to the natural world and the angelic realms, right? So it's not just attunement to the material world as Capricorn represents, but the attunement to the material world as an expression of God, right? Or of source or the creator, because that's really what Capricorn at its highest version can represent to us and represent in general, right? The law of nature, the law. So there'll be a really strong pull for us to, in our bodies, in our relationships, in the things that we physically, materially value, in justice and fairness, right? Because Venus rules Libra. So what's balanced and aesthetically pleasing as well, right? There's going to be a strong pull and a responsibility to really align ourselves with cosmic universal rhythm. And the square here is going to be the fact that we're going to get pulled it's going to be so easy to get our attention pulled off of the big picture in that moment, because we'll be pulled right into a bunch of feelings, right? A bunch of really strong, possibly explosive, possibly flaring tempers, anger, revenge feeling, all in a way that is keeping us from seeing the full picture of who we are, each of us, right? And how we identify ourselves. The square is an important moment of discomfort, because the thing is that we can't completely let go of the work on our own identity and the work on our own self and the work of who we are and the impulse to be ourselves. This is important work. And so we have to be sensitive, I would say, to also getting pulled into, well, it's your responsibility to do X, Y, or Z for the betterment of everybody else, for the good of the collective, right? And Venus here is really going to challenge what that means for all of us and bring it right to our doorstep of material reality and what's valuable to us in our day-to-day life. And so that's also part of this square, is the moon is going to meet Chiron in this degree, and we don't want to lose sight of the big picture or the full impression that we are seeing about ourselves. It will be very easy to get pulled into the triggering and the woundedness of Chiron, because the emotional aspect of us is going to be very tied into this as well. And I just feel like there's going to be arguments, right? There's a distinct, arguments, and really a lot of anger, and anger at people for maybe not doing what people think that other people should be doing. It's going to get very raw and personal, right? It's going to be right in our faces and right in our feelings come Monday. So you see why the weekend is so important for us to really feel into what this gateway is actually going to mean in terms of oneness, because it will be challenged every step of the way, I guarantee you, as we move through the week. And the sun will square Jupiter at the same time. I almost forgot about that. So then we see the sun in a square to Jupiter in Aquarius. And this is another really strong challenge to finding our voice and our expression through a real challenge to transform ourselves based on a peak experience, okay? It's one thing to go and be inspired by somebody giving a sermon, for instance, right? This is a very basic type of analogy. It's another thing entirely to take that and to apply it to your everyday life. And this is a real challenge to transform ourselves. It's one thing to go into the depths of Scorpio. It's quite another to take what's there and actually put it to use in a real way. And we're gonna express ourselves through this. The challenge here in the square is going to be our expansion and our advocacy and the resources afforded to us to not get pulled into the passions of this situation. I mean, this is what the sun in itself represents, is passion. And then you add the square element between Scorpio and Aquarius at that moment, and it becomes even more challenging, because Jupiter just takes up all of the space, right? Jupiter's larger than life. It's the big, broad picture. And the big, broad picture is actually these lightning bolts that keep getting thrown towards us to keep us in line to this aspect. Overcoming the passions to teach wisdom from actual experience of overcoming the passions. And we get this from our connection to the entire collective, to what it means to be an awakened and conscious collective of humanity. And these two squares on first thing on Monday are really going to be very obvious, I think. And they're really going to show us where we need to do some more work. And also, too, showing us the difference between our voice and our own expression and what, where our passion is, and how to actually be a guide or an advocate for overcoming that or moving past that, or eventually getting to a point where we felt that, and then how did it actually translate to the collective in general. This is wow. This is going to be something else, that's for sure. I mean, I know I say that a lot, but I don't know what else to say, because it's just like, whoa. So the moon, of course, is going to be in Aries, and then we'll move into Tuesday, where it's still going to be in Aries. What is that? Oh, it's in a square to Pluto. It's in conjunction to asteroid Eris, which is the goddess of discord, in square to Pluto, and the chaos that we are existing within, at the same time having to really contend with the very real and raw destruction of the reality that we are living in. This square is going to be very important in terms of being able to manage living in that space in between what's been and what's to come, right? It's the emptiness in the middle. It's that blink when in the oscillation. It's like that moment where you get to the top of the breath and you wait. It's that still point. It's the singularity. And it's a very direct feeling-based experience of what it's like to be in the middle of destruction and creation in that empty space for just that moment. And it's going to, again, the square is the challenge, because we're talking about each of us individually, right? With Aries and our impulse to be and our potency and our desire to create ourselves, as opposed to what is being destroyed. I think this is a really important theme, and I think it's getting lost a lot in terms of what's happening in our world, because the tendency here is to be very focused on what we can fix, or what we can come to understand about the society and the truth coming out, and making changes to the collective nature. All of these things it's not that they're not important and that we shouldn't be focusing on them, because we are inevitably, because it's all up here, right? All of this is at the top of the chart, which has to do with the collective experience, our experience in relationship. But we're also having to, we can't lose sight of the fact that Chiron and Uranus and the nodal axis, at least Rahu, are in positions that have a lot, and also too, asteroid Ceres is in Gemini as well. We can't lose sight of what we each individually are meant to be doing for ourselves as well, and what kind of work and ultimately are at a soul level. We are still moving in a direction that has to do with the individual consciousness, and our ability to individually and personally manage the bifurcation as really just two sides to the same coin. So this moment here is going to be a real challenge for us to each stay in, or at least not lose sight of that space of creation that is really the emptiness of the chaos, right? Within each of us, in the face of and squaring off with Pluto, that's just destroying everything that we've relied upon in terms of our social environment, right? It's very easy to get fixated on trying to fix that and kind of lose sight of the fact that we are each on an individual evolutionary journey, and those things aren't actually meant to be separate from each other. But if we lose sight of where we're going individually, our own evolution, our own spiritual growth, it doesn't matter what's going on up here. Like, we're not going to have as much of an impact on what's going on. And this is, I think, where Venus is really going to be, in some ways, is giving us the patience and a sense of responsibility, but also is really drawing our attentions exclusively to the very area that Pluto has already come through and laid waste to. So That's important too. As we go along, we cannot let go of, our own journey in this, as we are addressing the collective evolution too. Now, Mars comes into an opposition with Uranus, and the moon will be with Uranus when this is happening again. So there's all of these personal, intuitive, feeling-based connections and our own reflection outward that's connecting to all of these areas. So the moon is exalted in Taurus. It's very powerful here. It's going to meet Uranus and then come at, let's just look at that. It's going to meet Uranus while Mars and Uranus are in opposition. So the moon is going to have us feeling way more into this opening of the gateway here and what we can't take with us. And we will feel it. It'll be very obvious to us at a feeling-based level what we can take with us and what we can't, right? What is the baggage that is holding us back from fully ascending? That's something that's going to be brought right to our emotional awareness and probably be reflected out. But in some ways, that will help find the balance point here with Mars that is at the same point of the new moon, right? Going into the lab. Now he's going in with some force behind it and being like, okay, I want to do something. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to get to the root of this. I'm going to connect the dots come hell or high water, and I'm going to get to the bottom of things. And over here, it's just like, well, that's great. But over here, it's like the more we produce together, the more that we are creating to have to take with us. There's karma involved as well. And so we will have to be very aware of what it is we are feeling when it comes to this. This will be very, very insightful here. Although this Mars in Scorpio is very powerful. So there's going to be a tendency to be much more focused on this area of doing and getting to the bottom of things and really strongly, forcefully kind of like, I'm putting all the, it's just like, I'm going in there and I'm going to put these things together and I don't listen to anybody else and I'm just going to go forward. And we have to find the balance point here because we can't, entirely just be letting, just releasing all of everything. We can't just leave the body, right? I mean, we can, and people will do that, and they have been doing that. And that's the other thing too. We may find that this opposition could signal some sort of if we are not able to go, if we don't have the initiative to really do this, I feel like that there is the possibility that this could open that gateway to find to transition, right? And to be able to find that oneness outside of the body because the baggage is too great for us to do it in this material realm. So that's something else to consider too. This is the 17th of November, a very important day that Mars is in an opposition to Uranus. And then we come into, right after that, then Mercury comes into that trine with Neptune, just where the sun is today. So next week on Thursday, the realm of the mind, the realm of communication, how our minds work and what it's focusing on, again, will be in. So the expression and the thoughts and the communication and our rational ability to obey our conscience is going to come forward and find a stabilization again with Neptune and Pisces in this degree of Pisces that's having us fully surrender and trust and be able to feel into the goodness of what's coming and what is about to be born in a very spiritual way. So whereas the sun was more expressive and finding our voice and our passion, Mercury is going to be a lot less ego involved, going to be a lot more practical, a lot more logical about it, a lot more possibly even strategic about it, and certainly going to be a lot less emotional about it. This is Orion. The Orion nature, the Orion starseed nature is obviously very closely linked to Mercury or Hermes and what that represents. So it won't be nearly as passionate. It'll be way more like logical and reasonable in terms of like, no, I'm not going to do this, and this is why. And I'm going to actually give you bullet points about why I'm not going to do this. And so that may appeal to more people than the voice and expression, right, of the sun. It just depends on the type of person you are. But I do feel like by next week, it's going to be actually rooted in some information as opposed to just like an expression of our passion in that moment. So, which then we have the eclipse on Friday. And we'll talk a lot about that. I got reports coming. I got a full moon report coming. We got eclipse season and the Pleiadian revival coming out as a report. And I'm really excited to be able to offer all of this stuff to you guys. So that's going to do it for today and for this weekly astrology. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to check in with the chat real quick and see what's going on here. It's like my soul is rapidly evolving, but my brain and body are a bit slower, and that's where the processing comes in. I totally agree with this. That's exactly how I feel as well. I think a lot of people could probably relate to this. It's like, because the soul is timeless. It's outside of time and space. So it's able to, it's not related to the actual material reality that has a distinct set of cycles that we have to go through and that we can't actually bypass necessarily. So it's like, again, there's this bifurcation within us in some ways. So I think that's a really good, that's really insightful. And I think it really very well describes what needs to be. It really well describes, I think, what a lot of people might be going through in right now and in the days ahead. So, and that's important because we're, like I said, the full moon lunar eclipse, there'll be a distortion. It will not be an accurate reflection of what we ultimately need to release very much in terms of a natural shedding of something, right? We'll feel something, but what we see, it won't line up. I really feel very strongly about it. And this is the timestamp for the Pleiadian revival when the nodes fully shift. So it's not, that's the other thing too, it's just not time yet. And the eclipse in some ways, as much as it's distorted and is in some ways a, quote unquote bad omen. I don't really like to use that, but it's not exactly the full expression of this astrological transit. It also kind of keeps things from being fully realized before its time. So everything has its time and everything has its cycle and everything has its place, just like these eclipses. So that's something to consider as well, because what's eclipse other than, the moon and the sun coming into their opposition along the nodal axis, right? So it's very karmic. And it really shows that there's more karmic work to do before we can have a full expression of what it is we need to release or let go of at a, for each of us, the connection that we have to our own spirit and soul. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're interested in a reading or energy work to support your process, you can book through catalystenergies.net, description box below. You can also get on my mailing list. You can do that through the website as well. It comes up on a splash page the minute you come to the homepage. And so that way, when I'm offering new reading sales or new service or anything else, reports, anything like that coming through the email. I don't spam you. It may be 3 every month at the most, right? And then we can connect on social media, of course, through Telegram and Facebook. That is in the description box below as well. So thank you. I love you guys. I truly appreciate each and every one of you, everything, your subscriptions, your likes, your comments, your subscribes on Subscribestar. That really means a lot. And we will touch base on Monday after this crazy weekend. So I love you guys. I know I keep saying it, but it's absolutely true. And I value each and every one of you so much. Take care of yourselves. Have a great weekend. Allow your heart to open, right? And allow yourself to really kind of surrender into the experience of oneness, because that's what the 1111 gateway really represents. And so, and don't be, I would say, don't be afraid to just feel what comes through. You don't have to identify with it necessarily. You just have to take the opportunity to really feel it, because every time you do, it's, another tool in your tool belt right? In terms of mastery of this realm. And for star seeds and light workers, that's what we're here to do. So, all right, guys, have a great weekend. God bless each and every one of you. And we will be together on Monday. Bye.